Chinese spy people, and TikTok is just a spyware gadget for the Chinese.
I've seen a very senior MAGA figure place a large amount of money on Robert Kennedy being on the ticket.
Generation Z is currently being run by the white liberal young women of its party.
Still with me is the Times of London's Katy Balls, and joining us is commentator Chloe Trapanotto. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
Yes,
Very
there we go. Right, another name that I'm going to try and not mess up. Jack Schlossberg, social media provocateur, gives politics a try. This kid's never had a job. Never had a real job. He's running around New York with a slick new video. He's running for a seat in Congress, but of course, Chloe, he's a Kennedy. Just what we need, another Nepo baby Kennedy. Is that is there a law in America that we secretly missed that there must always be a Kennedy in some position of power?
If I were a Kennedy, I would not go anywhere near public office. Have they not heard of the Kennedy curse? I think it's a terrible idea that he's trying to run again. Even his own mother has said, I do not want my son to run for Congress. I'm afraid for his safety because his father is a Jewish man, and the left does not like Jewish men, especially running for positions of power. So I pray for him. I hope that he's not hurt at all, but even his own mother does not want him to.
Look at a remarkable scenario, though. We're going to have RFK in the White House as nominally a Dem convert. His nephew in Congress. They've got half the Kennedy family saying, "Get this guy out of Trump's administration. He's dangerous." And then, RFK becoming sort of a cult hero in America with the MAGA movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm a little bit upset that he said the things that he did about RFK. RFK's only grandson is seen on social media mocking his grandfather and his voice problem that he has. I think it's quite rude, and I do not think that he's going to do very well in the primaries because he's not being a very serious candidate. He's kind of presenting himself as an unserious, just playboy Nepo baby, like you said. We'll see how he plays and how he fares, but
you're big on the TikTok, I'm told, and so is he. Are we going to start seeing TikTokers in politics?
Yes,
fancy
we are, Harry.
Fancy a tilt of the job.
We're going to see a lot of TikTok in politics, which is very funny because later on our segment is about Chinese spy people, and TikTok is just a spyware gadget for the Chinese, but I do think that a lot of different politicians running for office are going to be using TikTok, and unfortunately the young liberal left has almost mastered it. Mamdani, that's the whole reason that he won.
Katy, the right playing catch up. I mean, obviously the right had a very powerful voice on social media, and he got shot in the neck not long ago. But it is the right playing catch up on the left. It does seem that the progressive side of things have mastered the new media mantras.
I mean, I don't know as much as my fellow panellists, but it does feel a bit to me as though the left has actually been catching up a bit with where the right has got in recent years.
Yeah.
So you look at the Turning Point movement, you referenced the late Charlie Kirk. But, Turning Point, the largest kind of grassroots youth right-wing organisation in America, there is not, to me, a left-wing alternative to that. I went to Turning Point Summit in the summer, met Charlie Kirk there, and, that turnout, you saw the left actually turning up to kind of with their own protest group, being like, we're the rivals to Turning Point. There are about 12 of them, and some of them in dinosaur costumes. It wasn't, it was not the kind of sense of excitement. I walked around this conference, and you spoke to these young kids, and I would say, why are you here? They had Donald Trump Jr. speaking, they had Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, Kristen Noem, and they would all say, oh, Charlie Kirk, because we saw a TikTok video. So, yes, the movement's lost a really important person, but I think TikTok has already in America brought so many young people to the right. And certainly Nigel Farage, I'll just say briefly, is learning a bit from Charlie Kirk. You knew him. Yeah. And we've seen Reform in the UK.
Fireworks at Reforms rallies.
Young men on TikTok, that's been a big thing for Reform because they've learned from the American right.
Then what about the social media we don't necessarily see? The sort of MAGA movement is, the sort of Facebook mums movement. The popularity of Robert F. Kennedy is understated. I've seen a very senior MAGA figure place a large amount of money on Robert Kennedy being on the ticket next time round. Are we beyond the TikToks and the more, the sort of older social media users, well, dare I say, boomer social media? That is one to watch as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, speak to key figures in the MAGA movement. For example, Steve Bannon, others, Megyn Kelly, influential voices, not in the administration, but seen as important to it. They will say, what was the magic recipe that led to, that decisive election result? And I think MAGA was really important for bringing over female voters and also younger voters to a degree, and these granola mums. And lots of people in the UK will say, oh, there's an anti-vax movement, and that's how they define MAGA. Now, there is an element of vaccine skepticism in that movement for sure, but there's also a whole other section which is about kind of healthier food.
Is that a granola mum? Is that what we mean?
I'm not a granola
but
mum,
what is,
and my diet is so far from what it should be for one. But I do think there is the sense of, what am I feeding my kids?
Right.
What are the chemicals in the system? And what is Big Pharma doing in these areas, which does fit into the granola mum. Often in slightly more affluent areas, you have these voters who voted for Trump. Who I've spoken to relatives, saying, oh, my mum's a granola mum, or my aunt, and she would never have voted for Trump before MAGA.
Yeah. Chloe, I mean, it was young college-educated women who'd lived in New York for less than 5 years that basically got Mandami over the line in the election. We talk a lot about the sort of disengaged young male voter, but it's just as bad as for females. Well, it seems that the boys attacking right, the girls attacking to the left. That's going to be a problem for the Republicans going forward if they're losing half of Generation Z.
Generation Z is currently being run by the white liberal young women of its party, at least in terms of the Democratic side. I think you're absolutely right that it was the young, progressive, liberal, very educated women in New York City that got him over the line. I think it was over 50% of Gen Z views socialism favorably now. So they've got that going for them. The left, they've got a very good view of socialism, and they've also got a lot of young liberal women liking Mamdani and what he stands for. So I do think that with TikTok, Charlie Kirk was very influential in drawing those young men over to the Republican Party and explaining to them why it is that socialism is not the way forward for America. I think we need some sort of female presence on the right now to bring those remaining female voters back over to the conservative.
Yeah, I mean, who you can blame? Well, we talked about this last night. It's like, and Ben Shapiro has made this point, J.D. Vance has made this point. It actually is, if you don't have a stake in society, if you can't get a house, if you can't get a job, if you are saddled with college debts for a degree that's basically worthless because you can't get a job after it, if capitalism isn't giving you what you need, then who can blame the kids for going down the dangerous and well-trodden and disastrous path of socialism?
Right now, the first-time home buyers are over the age of 40 in America, which is really daunting for young people. However, not all is lost. Down in Florida, if you take a look at what they're doing down there, Ron DeSantis was somehow able to lower the interest rates by using these tort reforms. So there are ways to put money back into people's pockets, not just through using government subsidies, like the way the left often wants to do it, but just take a look at Florida. They're doing a really great job of making it so that young people can buy homes sooner. So I think there are ways.
Yeah,
but
and you don't necessarily have a God-given right to live in New York, right?
Right, absolutely. Don't live in New York. Just move down south. And you'll be fine.
Let's move on. Story caught my eye today. I like this one. A Chinese-owned trailer park located next to a U.S. military base in Missouri. The very base they fly the B-2 bombers out of has been taken over by the Chinese. I mean, I can't think what they might be doing there, Katie. House Armed Services Committee saying national security red flag. The Chinese are taking the mickey, aren't they?
Yeah, it's one of those stories you read it and you do wonder if it's the 1st of April, in the sense that it just doesn't quite tally. And of course, you have an administration that talks a really good game on tackling China, but actually has quite a confused China policy. In the sense of, you have your China hawks, but on the one hand, Trump will say, oh, I've had this great meeting with Xi. We obviously had the situation on TikTok where they're trying to change ownership, but it's not quite yet clear to me how far this administration wants to go.
Chloe, I mean, President Xi and Donald Trump were, grinning, all grins and handshakes last week, sort of immediate tariff relief, minerals and so forth. At the same time, in across America, we had the spy balloons a couple of years ago. We've got this, Chinese trailer park next to a nuclear base. In London, there's a massive row over letting the Chinese build their super embassy right next to our financial district, and that could have access to the actual cables that make capitalism work. While the politicians are smiling and, as Katie says, confused, the Chinese are running rings around us, aren't they?
Right. It was just today that Kash Patel came in front of the United People, or the American people, and said, we just had a agreement with the CCP, and now they are banning 13 different chemicals that are being used to create fentanyl. Yeah. So it seemed like things were hunky-dory, but then it turns out that just under a mile from that U.S. Whiteman military base, there are trailer parks that are owned by people with CCP ties. Very, very scary.
I mean, Donald Trump, just in 20 seconds, he said that China is the biggest threat facing them, but he doesn't really seem to be doing it. As Katie said, he talks a good game, but still some way to go there, right?
I think so. I think they're very sneaky people. I was reading an article, and the couple that bought this territory that's right next to the base, they are connected to this. His name is Igu or something.
Yeah.
And he was connected to Trump. So I think we have to be careful who is near the president, because these people, they come in years and years ago, and now here they are. It's coming decades later. They're actually not as great.